Good afternoon. Adolescents under the age of 18 are not allowed to vote, buy lottery tickets, get married without the consent of a parent, purchase cigarettes or alcohol, serve on criminal juries, or drive without restrictions. But if you're under the age of 18 and as young as 10 years old in some states, you can be held mature, responsible, and culpable enough to be treated as an adult in the criminal justice system. So how did we get here as a nation? And where's the gap in our understanding of who youth are? In the Colorado Revised Statutes 19-2-518, a juvenile can be transferred from the juvenile justice system to the adult system as young as 12 years old, depending on the seriousness of the offense and other extenuating factors in the case. This is termed a transfer law, permitting the court, under certain circumstances, to bypass the protections for juvenile offenders inherent in the juvenile system by transferring the juvenile to adult court, where sentences and punishment can be much harsher. The complement to the transfer law, which is the direct file statute, allows youth to be directly filed in adult court and bypasses the juvenile court altogether. And this has undergone substantial limitations in recent years. In 2012, Colorado passed a law that greatly limited direct file eligibility and gave youth the right to appeal any direct file decisions, no longer giving prosecutors sole discretion in charging youth as adults. However, the transfer law still exists as an avenue to charge children in adult court. The transfer law holds that a juvenile's case may be transferred to adult court if the youth was at least 12 years old when they committed an act equal to a Class 1 or 2 felony or crime of violence, or if the youth was at least 14 years old when they committed an act equal to a felony. My project was a policy revision, research, and recommendation on the transfer law. This included a literature review and a policy analysis with the following components: historical, political, social, and economic analyses. I also researched different states with more progressive policies, such as Missouri and California, in order to provide a model Colorado could strive for. The analyses culminated into a policy revision recommendation and an incentive for advocacy that is grounded in social work values. The analysis results lay the foundation to advocate for the removal of the transfer law from a social justice perspective, and I'll present some of my most salient findings here. First, the adult criminal system was not built for adolescents, yet it is estimated that around 200,000 adolescents are tried, sentenced, or incarcerated as adults each year. Statistics show that adolescents bear the brunt of many detrimental effects when tried as adults and when sentenced to detention. When sentenced in the adult criminal system, adolescents miss out on necessary education, treatment, and rehabilitative opportunities that enjoy a greater focus in the juvenile system. Adolescents in detention are at a greater risk of abuse overall when placed in detention, but they face a substantially higher risk in the adult system. Adolescents are 5 times more likely to be victims of sexual assault in adult prisons than in juvenile facilities, and a much higher risk of violence or theft committed against them. Adolescents in adult facilities are at least 8 times more likely to commit suicide than adolescents in juvenile facilities, though some studies suggest this number is far higher. And if adolescents have contact with any point in the adult criminal system, they are at a much higher risk for recidivism. Clearly, the outcomes for adolescents within the adult system are abhorrent. But in order to understand the current situation, it is important to examine how the juvenile justice system became what it is today. When the juvenile justice system was first formed in the early 1900s, it was an intentionally separate system was set up for youth with the underlying acknowledgement that youth are fundamentally different from adults in levels of developmental capacity and culpability. Instead, it was believed that youth should be given a second chance through rehabilitation. The advent of the juvenile justice system in the U.S. and in Colorado began with a rehabilitative approach, operating under the belief that youth could change and that youth are just not as mature or socially or emotionally developed. And Colorado was actually one of the first states to form a separate juvenile justice system. But there has been an alarming political shift in both law and social policy from the initial developmental assumptions of the juvenile justice system. The summer of 1993 in Denver was coined the Summer of Violence as the news media perpetuated the growing national concern of rising youth violence and the city's apparent emerging problem of youth involved in gangs. This occurred concomitantly with the burgeoning national tough-on-crime policy-making trend. Additionally, two prominent criminologists theorized that an emerging breed of teen super predators was beginning to threaten U.S. society. This received sweeping media attention and spread an unfounded public fear of juvenile delinquents and a desire to crack down on crime. So as public fear began to grow, fueled by the media, the governor of Colorado at the time called a special session of the legislature to address the seemingly uncontrollable wave of apparent youth violence, passing several pieces of legislation that cracked down on juvenile crime and established Colorado's direct file and transfer laws. The juvenile justice system in Colorado, therefore, swung to the complete other side of the spectrum, away from the rehabilitative and change-centered approach towards youth who commit crimes and towards a more punitive and unforgiving perspective towards these children, following a national trend. So while there have been some progressive policies for widespread juvenile justice reform implemented in Colorado in recent years, the existence of the transfer law still remains a challenge to adolescents involved in the justice system. The juvenile justice system was created separate from the criminal justice system, purposefully, because of society's acknowledgement of the social, psychological, emotional, and cognitive differences between adolescents and adults. There's extensive literature that examines the difference in development between adolescents and adults, providing implications for criminal culpability and accountability for adolescents who commit crimes. Adolescent development is markedly different from that of adults, providing an ethical impetus within social work to advocate for the unique needs of this population that experiences oppression and vulnerability within our criminal justice system. While juvenile justice reform has come a long way in recent years, policies such as the transfer law require deeper scrutiny and reform to ensure that juveniles are not experiencing what the Eighth Amendment prohibits: cruel and unusual punishment. This project aim was to critically analyze this policy with a social justice lens and examine its historical, political, and social context in order to provide realistic and well-informed recommendations of how to move forward and revise this policy in Colorado's Juvenile Justice Code. I hope this analysis can be used to help inform stakeholders on the detrimental effects of the transfer law and overall punitive measures, such as detention and incarceration on youth, and propose advocacy for change. Thank you.